On a vast flat plain in modern-day Turkey, a 32-acre mound rises from the earth. For millennia, it was just a hill, indistinguishable from the landscape. But this is a tell, an artificial mound built from 2,000 years of human history, one layer at a time. Beneath it lies a secret that rewrites the very idea of a city. This is Çatalhöyük. 9,000 years ago, 4,000 years before Scarab Ray, 4,500 years before the Great Pyramid of Giza, a civilization built one of the world's first cities. But it was a city with no streets, no alleys, no courtyards, no ground floor doors. It was a single, massive, monolithic honeycomb of houses, packed together into one solid block. To get home, you had to walk across your neighbor's roofs and climb down a wooden ladder through a hole in your ceiling. How did Stone Age people, just learning to farm, build this superstructure? And why did they build a city that you could only enter from the sky? The Konya Plain in southern Anatolia is a land of extremes. A vast, flat, semi-arid basin, it is a challenging place to survive. The summers are a scorching, arid furnace where the baked earth cracks and the air shimmers with blinding heat. The winters are bitter, freezing and snow-covered, with winds sweeping unimpeded across the endless flatland. This is not an easy place to live. Yet 9,000 years ago, in the dawn of the Neolithic Age, humanity was in the midst of its greatest revolution. We were learning to domesticate plants, to create food, not just find it. We were taming animals, shifting from wild einkorn wheat to domestic crops. The hunter-gatherer world that had defined us for 200,000 years was ending. And here, in this challenging land, a group of these first farmers chose this exact spot to build one of the largest and strangest settlements on Earth. This is Çatalhöyük. For millennia, it was just a local landmark, the Forked Mound. It wasn't a village, with a population that may have reached 8,000 people at its peak. It was a mega-site, a true city. But when archaeologist James Mellart began excavating the mound in the 1960s, he expected to find what we all expect from a city: walls, gates, streets, and public squares. Instead, he found an impossible mystery. There were no roads, no public squares, no alleys, no courtyards, no gaps between the buildings. Mellart dug and dug, but the puzzle only deepened. The city was a solid, densely packed, continuous maze of mud brick houses, all built wall to wall, like a massive, single man-made beehive. The entire city was one single, monolithic structure. So how did you get around? How did you get home? The answer was a revolutionary. The streets were on the roofs. Life in Çatalhöyük was lived on two levels. The roofs were the public space. They were the streets, the courtyards, and the plazas. Imagine a vast 32-acre flat roofscape, bustling with activity, covered in thick white lime-based plaster, shining in the sun. This is where children played, where people dried their grain and fruits, where they crafted obsidian tools and socialized, walking from block to block across the roofs of their neighbors. This is where the rubbish was tossed, slowly building up in open midden areas, gaps in the hive that once filled would be built upon. And when it was time to go home, you found your family's opening and you climbed down a tall wooden ladder, plunging from the bright, open public world of the street into the dark, smoky, private, sacred world of your home. This discovery presented an incredible question. Why build like this? Why create a city you can only enter from the sky? The answer is a masterclass in Neolithic social engineering, born from two simple needs: safety and weather.
First, defense. Çatalhöyük had no city walls because the city was the wall.
The outer houses of the complex presented a solid, blank 20-foot-high mud brick face to the outside world, a sheer, unbroken cliff of mud brick. There were no ground floor doors or windows for an enemy to break through. It was impenetrable. To invade the city, a rival tribe would need to bring their own heavy ladders, scale the sheer outer wall, only to be met by 8,000 people fighting them from the high ground of their own home turf, the rooftops. It was a near-perfect defensive fortress built not around a city, but as a city. The second reason was the climate. This honeycomb design was a masterpiece of thermal insulation. Think of a modern apartment building. You only pay to heat your outer walls, your neighbors heat the rest. The people of Çatalhöyük had the same idea 9,000 years ago. By sharing every single wall with a neighbor, the entire city acted as one single insulated block. This massive thermal mass trapped the heat from thousands of hearths during the freezing winters, keeping the city alive. In the scorching summer, the thick, shared mud brick walls and the small, high rooftop openings, which let smoke out, created a natural airflow, keeping the interiors remarkably cool. But the true mystery of Çatalhöyük was found inside. The homes were dark, rectangular rooms lit only by the smoky central hearth and the single shaft of light from the roof hole. The walls were coated in a smooth, clean white plaster, and those walls were alive with art. Archaeologists found the world's first wall paintings, massive dynamic hunting scenes of men in leopard skin loincloths pulling the tongues of giant wild bulls or aurochs. They found geometric patterns like the first carpets, and even a painting of a nearby twin-peaked volcano, Hasan Dağ, erupting, with the city's honeycomb layout painted at its base. It may be the world's first map. And they found strange, powerful and terrifying sculptures. Massive bull skulls, or bucrania, were plastered to the walls, their real, enormous horns jutting out into the small, smoky room, often set into benches. In other homes, pairs of leopard skulls, plastered and painted, were found. These weren't just decorations, these were shrines. And perhaps most famous, they found the seated woman of Çatalhöyük, a striking clay figure of a large, full-bodied mother goddess sitting on a throne flanked by two large felines, a powerful symbol of fertility and authority. This city was built not just for survival, but for intense, daily ritual practice. But the strangest, most alien discovery of all was under the floors.
The people of Çatalhöyük did not have cemeteries. They had no place for the dead. They buried their dead directly beneath the floors of their homes. A family lived, ate, and slept for generations on raised platforms directly on top of their buried ancestors. When a person died, they were often laid out in the open air first for vultures and insects to clean, a process seen in their wall art. And then, their clean, bundled bones were brought back home and interred beneath the sleeping platform, replastered into the floor. Sometimes the skulls of important ancestors were removed, plastered to resemble a living face and kept in the house, circulated for rituals, before being reburied. Imagine the psychology of this. The ancestors never left. You were born, you slept, you lived your entire life in the same room as your grandmother, your great-grandmother, and all the generations before you. It was a people who quite literally lived with their history, their past, and their dead. For over 2,000 years, this city thrived. They were not just farmers, they were traders. They controlled the local trade in obsidian, a black volcanic glass from Hasan Dağ that was sharper than steel. Their razor-sharp tools and polished mirrors have been found hundreds of miles away. They were artisans, crafting fine, thin-walled pottery, woven textiles from flax, and intricate baskets so tight they could hold water. They were a bustling, art-filled, deeply religious communal hive. And remarkably, a society without rulers. Archaeologists have found no palaces, no royal tombs, no central government buildings. Every house, while unique in its art, was nearly identical in size and layout. It suggests a deeply egalitarian society, one of the first and largest ever known. A city of 8,000 people, with no mayors, no kings, held together only by shared ritual, shared history, and the walls they shared with their neighbors. And then, around 6000 BC, after 2,000 years of continuous life, the city was abandoned. There was no war, no catastrophe, no fire. The final layers were clean. It seems the people simply moved on. Why? Perhaps the local river, their lifeblood, shifted its course. Perhaps after 2,000 years, the dense communal life became too much. Disease may have spread easily, or the middens and smoke became unbearable. Or perhaps a society evolved, the rigid, equal, hive-like structure of the city just didn't fit their new world. They left their roof doors open one last time and walked away, letting the wind and rain dissolve the mud brick homes, collapsing them in on themselves, sealing their ancestors and their secrets inside the growing mound. Çatalhöyük is more than a ruin. It is a completely different blueprint for a city. It shows us a world where the street was a roof, the door was a ladder, a world without rulers, without centralization, held together by belief, and where the entire community was bound together wall to wall into a single, living, man-made organism. A city built on art, religion, and the bones of its own past.